Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to the new video after 5 months. Today we're going to create this video.
In 1903, in a small cabin in Wisconsin, USA, a moment of victory unfolded for 4 individuals. In that humble space, the Harley and Davidson families breathed life into a brilliant idea. What emerged that day wasn't just a fantastic set of wheels. It was the birth of a company that stood strong through the challenges of the Great Depression.
Hey, so let's not waste time here. I'm gonna jump into the main video right now. Okay, to create this type of motion design, you have to create a composition first. Composition setting could be on your recommendation, but you have to keep it in mind that composition have direct effect on your processor and GPU. Like for mid-power PCs, Full HD is good enough. Believe me, after 5 hours of editing, it will put so much pressure on your GPU and CPU. And with high power PCs, you can go up to 4K, but you don't have to. Full HD is good enough, unless you are making a film. Okay, so tip number 1. When you are working in a long sequence, you have to divide it in several parts for easy editing.
In 1903, in a small cabin in Wisconsin, USA, a moment of victory unfolded for 4 individuals. In that humble space, the Harley and Davidson folded for 4 individuals.
So what I'm doing here, identifying and marking few chunks of audio for splitting. I'm gonna edit them separately in separate composition. Is it really important? Of course. This way you can lower the burden on your PC and make a little bit less mess here. And one more thing, don't mark in the middle of sentence. You have to wait till the sentence finish.
In that humble space, the Harley and Davidson families breathed life into a brilliant idea. What emerged that day wasn't just a fantastic set of wheels. It was the birth of a company that stood strong through the challenges of the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and the threat set of wheels. It was the set of wheels. It was the birth of a company that stood strong through the challenges of the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and the threat of bankruptcy. Here's how Harley-Davidson transformed from a small company with founders selling their homes to become a global brand valued at $4 billion.
If you have any excess audio, you can drag this line here and trim comp to work area. Now you have only useful part in the timeline. And I'm renaming this comp 1 to main comp. And here's an extra step. I'm renaming the marker for better understanding. Now select the audio and duplicate it. And we have to select a copy and split along the markers by pressing Ctrl Shift and D together. Now select all of the splitted copies and pre-compose them separately. Okay, so what we have now? We have 4 pre-compositions and you can work in them separately, and this way you can reduce the load in your PC and edit smoothly. Another thing is we can delete the extra part of the pre-composition each side. Now I'm gonna go into this composition and I'm gonna start editing here. So I'm forcing to fill this comp in work area. That way you can get rid of the extra space. This folder contains all of the assets I might need here. I'm choosing this small house to showcase the cabin mentioned in voiceover. So here our main goal is to create a parallax effect with this image. So at first I have to separate this house from this background. So I have to use masking here. Okay, in a few minutes I separated this house, but still I have to remove this part. After creating a mask around this section, I have to change this mask type to subtract. Now, this lower section needs to be feathered to blend with the new ground. So I just created a mask in the lower part and set the mask mode to subtract, and then just increase the feather. And now it's ready to blend with anything. Here I'm importing the same image. I'm gonna separate the ground out of it and set the both layer to 3D. Now you can adjust the position of both layers in 3D space, and this will give your scene a 3D parallax effect. Okay, when you zoom out your scene a bit, you can see like your ground layer is ending suddenly. So you have to extend those parts. For fixing this thing, you have to copy the ground layer in each side and you have to blend those sections with masks. Just create a mask in new copied ground layer, set the mask to subtract and increase the feather to blend. And now you have to repeat the step to other side. And don't forget to pre-compose those layers and make this pre-compose 3D by clicking this icon. And turn on collapse transformation button here. Now it's back to 3D. For the sky, I'm adding a night sky video with a moon on it. I also have to make this layer 3D, but I will do it later. Before that, I have to add some grass and trees in this composition. For removing any solid color from an image, you have to add a color range effect in that image. Now select color picker tool and select white pixels and add just fuzziness and all of the parameters depending on your image. Now I'm gonna make this layer 3D and place it where I want. I'm gonna place it here. But this grass is not blending with the scene, so I have to add some curve and tint effect here. So this composition is looking too empty, so I have to add a forest here. So add some trees and make them 3D and place it like a forest. To match color, I'm adding a curve effect, adjusting the brightness and increasing red channel. Now the color tone is a bit matching. Now I'm gonna duplicate the first tree and I'm gonna place it near the camera to give it a feel of depth of field. Now make the sky layer 3D. Push the sky layer far back and make it larger. Adjust the position of this layer till it looks good in your eyes. Oh, I just forgot to add the camera, so I'm gonna add it now. 35mm camera is good for this project. Okay, so because of the focal length of your camera, your background layer could look like a smaller. So you have to make it large. Now duplicate the trees and make a forest. After the forest, add a mountain in the back and adjust the color with curve effect. During this project, you have saw me multiple time opening this double tab. So what is this? It's kind of multiple tab. Like in right side I have final cam view and in left side I have upper layer view. Basically I can see the layers from upside, like you can understand the position of these layers easily. You can focus at some layers easily, something like this. I'm placing few trees in the left and the right side of the composition close to the camera to block the view and give it a feel of some fulfillment. By doing this you can give some depth to the composition. Now I need to open this door when camera fly out through this door. Okay guys, so now I'm gonna select the pen tool and I'm gonna mask out the door in this visible layer. Okay, here I duplicated this layer by mistake. You don't have to duplicate that layer in your composition. After masking, I made this mask subtracted. For easily understanding, I'm maximizing this panel. You can maximize any panel under the cursor by pressing this key in the keyboard. I need to delete this unwanted layer that was created by mistake. Now I'm duplicating this layer with the masked door and deleting all of the mask except the door mask. But nothing has changed. So for see the change, I'm gonna make this layer solo mode and I'm gonna invert the mask and turn off the solo mode. And now we have our door and shutter separated. Select the layer with the shutter and click on this anchor point button and move the anchor point in this section. Now your door will open from here like this. So in this composition I have two composition. One is inside the cabin and one is outside the cabin, and I have a camera. And I'm gonna create an orbit null to easily control the camera. So first of all I need 2 points for animating this sequence. I need a point from where the camera will start panning outside. So this is the point. Okay, I'm gonna set the frame here. So this is the point from where the camera will fly outside of the cabin. So I just reveal the properties of this orbit null and I'm gonna active all of the stopwatches. This way you can set a keyframe. Now you can go a few frames forward and set the final position for your camera. By doing this, the final position of your camera will be animated automatically. And after that, animate the blur level, aperture and focus distance as per your wish. Now leave the orbit null and go to the main camera and animate the rotation from start point to end point, like this. Now add a text layer, type your text and make that text 3D. If you don't make your text 3D, it will be stay in 2D mode and it will not work according to your camera, so it will look terrible. So after making the text layer 3D, place it in a good position where your audience can see the text and it have to give a feel of parallax. After that, I added a transition from atomics in this text. After that, turn on the depth of field and adjust the focus distance as per your requirement, like which text or which element you want to focus. You can just animate it. Now this text should have a shadow because it is in front of the light. So I just have to add a shadow to the text. But the built-in drop shadow effect not gonna work here. So I'm gonna duplicate the text, make it black and place to the ground by turning on 3D and make the blend mode to multiply. And you might have to adjust the opacity to make it more believable, as the text layer is 3D, so it will be automatically animated through the camera. Our most of the work for the first scene is almost done, but still we can add some more details in this composition. Like we can add some light coming out from window. So for this, duplicate the house layer and add deep glow there. Here I added a deep glow to the duplicated house layer, and I'm gonna mask out few light ray shape from every window, and I'm gonna feather it out till it look good. Press F for the feather by selecting the layer and increase the feather till it get blend with the scene. Now repeat the masking and feathering for all of the window. Hey, it's looking pretty good. Now I will add some flicker in the light, so I'm gonna go to the deep glow and alt click to the stopwatch icon in the exposure setting. It will turn on the script mode only for the exposure setting. Now you have to type this in the script panel. Wiggle first bracket start 5, 0.75 first bracket close. With this script, the exposure will like wiggle for 5 times per second at the value of 0.75. And now for the details part. Because the light is flickering, you have to also make the shadow flickering. So for this, you have to alt click the opacity and in the script panel type wiggle first bracket 5, 20 first bracket close. You can play with the amount. I know the light flickering and the shadow flickering will not match, but in the high speed, in the movement, viewers will not notice the difference. Here I'm adding few extra details in the text, like adding some bevel and emboss to the text and making the technique to the crystal hard and adjusting the size and everything. So you can do it or you can leave this part. After this, I have added a smoke layer in the composition. I turn this layer 3D and set the blend mode to the screen. And I have placed this layer in front of the camera so it can be visible all the way. Now you can see my video layer is a bit small, so I have to loop it out and extend it. For this, click on the desired layer and right click, select time remapping. And after that, go to this option, right click it, edit expression, then this button and go to the properties, and after that click loop out duration type equal to cycle 0, something like this. Now you can drag and extend your layer infinite time. What a cool trick. After that, spend a lot of time to adjust, reposition your smoke layer and turn down the opacity to make it a good fit with the scene.
A moment of victory unfolded for 4 individuals.
Now as per the audio, I have to pop up 4 people on the screen in front of the house. For that, I'm bringing this image and I'm gonna remove the background in the Photoshop. So do the right click and open it in Photoshop. Okay, so after opening the photo in Photoshop, you have to unlock the layer and you have to bring on the properties layer and you have to remove the background. You can right click on the photo layer and click on rasterize layer if you can't see the option of removing background. After the background is removed, you can go to the select panel and then select and mask. Then you can select the brushes and you can remove unwanted part from your photo. You can zoom in your photo by using magnifying glass. You can select like normal brush and go to the minus pointer, then like remove unwanted parts, or you can like select hairbrush or magic select mask or anything. So after doing this, we are gonna have some like full transparent background. You have to just export it as PNG. Now drag this PNG image to your composition and resize it, make it 3D. And you have to just animate the position by animating the keyframes and it's done. And you can add a drop shadow effect to separate it from the background. The final copy of your first composition will look like this. The people pop-up animation could look like a bit fast. You can adjust it later. Now as our first composition is down, we can go to the main composition and jump into the second comp to edit. As you are in the second composition, you can't like go and trim work area because it's in the middle. So if you do this, your timeline will be like disaligned. So you have to edit it like this. You can't trim the comp to the work area. So after listening to the audio, you can bring the sky layer. So this is my sky layer. After that, I'm gonna right click and add a solid, name it grid, and I'm gonna add grid effect in it. I'm gonna make the point size 2 and decrease the grid size. Then add tint and I'm gonna replace the white with red. You can choose your color, but red will suit here. The grids are looking too bold, so I'm gonna turn the opacity of the grid a bit down, so it can be like 50%. Okay, so here I have to add 4 individuals, so I'm gonna go to the Photoshop and make them PNG. After adding the PNG, I'm gonna turn them to 3D, like all of the layers to 3D, because I have to move it in 3D space. And you all know how to work in 3D space, so I'm gonna get into that. So I'm gonna add a drop shadow layer behind those men. So main key point in this section is the cycle, like how they invented. So I'm gonna add a cycle PNG and I'm gonna give a good look to it. So I'm gonna put the cycle behind them, readjust a few position, and I'm gonna add this kind of black and white transition. I'm gonna show you how to add this kind of transition to only a single element. Okay, so you have to cover the element with that transition video, and then you have to go to the matte by clicking toggle switch. Now click on the matte panel of your cycle layer and select ink bloom effect as your matte. Now you can't see like any changes here because you need to do a few steps here. So click on this icon to invert the matte and click on this icon to make it luma. Now you can see some visual changes in your cycle layer. Awesome! Transition is successfully applied in your cycle layer. I added a drop shadow to give it a more of depth. To finish the transition, you can do something like this. So you have a transition in layer. If you reverse the transition matte, then you can have a transition out layer also. Then you can apply the matte on that layer. If you have any problem, then you can split the cycle picture and then you can apply transition out on that second layer. Okay, I'm sorry, that might be confusing. So I'm gonna show you here clearly how did I did that transition in and out. For this, you have to import an ink drop clip like this. But here, this clip is not suitable for this transition. So I have to trim it up a bit. But why this is not suitable? Because it's not going from white to completely black, it's like moving around. So we have to create a composition where it goes completely black. So here I'm searching for the perfect spot where I can cut. Okay, now this should be the perfect spot. So I'm gonna cut here. The shortcut is Alt and right third bracket. Now duplicate this copy and I'm gonna set the screen mode to multiply. And after that, I'm gonna go to the transform mode and flip it horizontally. So my main goal here is to make the whole screen goes from white to black. And I duplicated another copy and positioned it horizontally. So this is enough for me. Now select all the new layers you have made and right click and pre-compose. Name it transition matte. Basic concept here is when I'm gonna apply matte to this transition layer, it's gonna work like white part would be visible and black part won't be visible. So this is for transition in, but we have to make a transition out. So trim that layer and duplicate it and place right after the layer ends and then make it reverse. So it's gonna be start and end effortlessly. Here the white layer is ending suddenly, so I have to add a white layer here also. So right click here and create new and a white solid, and we have to add that white layer after the transition end. So it's gonna be here and remaining part will be trimmed. And once again, now select all of the layers and pre-compose them. Now select the image and go to the track matte and use transition as a track matte. Then click the invert icon and then make alpha to luma. That little sun icon is luma. So it's done. The transition layer is properly working. Now you can resize, reposition and do whatever you want with this transition layer. It will reflect on that cycle like this. But it's quite simple. So we can add a drop shadow here to pop up the cycle really well. So after adding the drop shadow, play with the properties and you are good to go. Let's get back to the main tutorial. And now I'm gonna add a big wheel in the background because it will look good and it's about the bike. So wheel is necessary part. So I just want that wheel will the wheel will come fly from the right to left. So I'm gonna animate the position keyframe and I'm gonna add easing in the keyframe. You can select both keyframe and press F9 for easy ease, and you can adjust the speed in the graph section or you can use animation composer. And also here I want to use handycam plugin. So I added a null in the timeline and I added handycam in that null. And I pressed the setup button and it will set up automatically. And now I'm gonna animate a dolly zoom in. While it's zooming, the wheel will become on the screen, so I animated that way. I animated those wheels by keyframe. After that, I'm gonna add some highlighted text there. You can write anything you want in the screen, but you should remember that text should bring some value to your composition. So I'm choosing fantastic set of wheels. After that, place the text in the position where it look good and then add some color contrast. I'm gonna add red and white here and then I'm gonna use Atomx for the animation. Atomx is the best plugin to animate the text in After Effects. I use it in every project. This plugin saved me a lot of time. Okay, so this is our final second scene. And now I'm gonna add a bulb here, like yellow bulb, representing idea, because here's a line. It's saying that a fantastic idea came up. So this bulb will represent the idea, as you know. So I'm gonna add the deep glow effect and I'm gonna animate. I can animate using scale and position keyframing. I'm gonna do this here, and also you can use animation composer, but yeah, I'm gonna use scale animation, and I'm gonna adjust the graph, and I'm gonna turn on the motion blur also, and I'm gonna finish it using deep glow. Now I'm facing an issue here. The light from the bulb is not spreading, it's stuck in the boundary of the picture. You might also face this issue if you add deep glow in short boundary picture, because the size of the picture is really small. So how you can fix it? To fix this, you have to select the bulb layer and right click and pre-compose it. So by doing this, you have an area of your whole composition, and now you can click on the collapse transformation button and the light will be spread in the whole composition now. After the glow, you can animate like flickering by alt clicking on the exposure and then type wiggle and the expression. I have showed you this expression a lot of time. And after that, of course, don't forget to add a glow effect in the text and adjust it as you want. Really low glow will not look attractive and too much glow will ruin the show. Now it's time for the third scene. Okay, so based on the voiceover, I imported this picture and I have to change the name of the company. So I'm gonna draw a mask over here like shape layer, and the layer should be on only fill mode, and the fill color should be matched with the wall. So I'm gonna use the color picker tool here. Okay, if you made some mistake to create the shape, you can go to the content, shape, then path, then adjust the path of the shape. Now I'm adding a text layer and I'm gonna add the name I want. So here in this case I'm gonna add Harley Davidson. I'm gonna resize it, place it in the position. I'm gonna change the color of the text. I'm gonna add bevel by selecting the layer and going to the layer style and bevel. After that, click on the bevel and emboss, then style and make it pillow emboss. Now it will look like engraved in the wall. So yeah, that will give a good look. You can adjust the parameters as we make the other parallax. In this case also I have to mask apartment out and I have to extend the ground. So I'm gonna duplicate that apartment copy and I'm gonna mask out the ground layer in this copy. So now you can see this layer is not matching. So mixing it with the other layer is really easy. So I have to create another mask here in the upper layer. So after that, select the mask and I have to invert the mask, but I don't know why it's glitch here. It's not like any option here, so I think I have to delete the mask also right now. Okay, sorry, so there is not any glitch, I just made a mistake. So I was masking in the composition, but it's not the case. I have to go inside the composition and I have to mask in the main layer. So right now I'm gonna double click in the composition and go into the main layer and I'm gonna mask in this section, like in this main layer here. So I'm gonna mask this section, click invert and turn on the feather a bit. So okay, so it's like too much feather, so I'm gonna increase the mask here. So it's an instant solution. Like in this video editing sector, you fall always in a different kind of problem, different kind of situation, but you have to find your own solution to make that thing happen, because there is a multiple ways to handle a problem. So yeah, it's up to you how you can solve the problem. So you have to be a problem solver. Okay, now let's get back to the project. Okay, so what did I did here? I speeded up the entire process because the processes are really simple here. I just added a PNG tree here and make that 3D and place them in the background of the company. I duplicated them multiple times and added a sky layer. And of course I placed them in a 3D space, like the tree in the far left is the closest to the camera, then you can have the bike, then you have the company, then you have the garden filled with the trees, and then in the far back you have the sky layer. The sky is blue, so I have to make it black to fit with the composition. I'm gonna add Handycam to animate the camera. Handycam has more option than the normal camera. Okay, so what's happening here? You have a tree in the front, then you have the bike, then the company, then the ground, and then the sky, like in real life. So this setup called 3D parallax. So after you create the 3D parallax, you can animate the camera and it will look great. So this is the camera animation I did here, and I animated the building from down to up and added motion blur to give a depth. Okay, so now it's looking quite good.